So everyone in this room has heard about green buildings. We've been in green buildings, we've experienced green buildings. 12 years ago, the U.S. Green Building Council conceptualized green buildings when they established the LEED rating system. LEED provided building owners with a framework for identifying and implementing practical and measurable green solutions. This system has proven that green building is a marketable commodity. Today, as a result, there are 9 billion square feet of building space rated by LEED, which would cover nearly 2/3 of the city where we now stand. These LEED-certified buildings across the world are designed to reduce waste, conserve energy and water, lower operating costs, increase asset value, and reduce harmful greenhouse gas emission. LEED focuses on 4 areas, which is a flexible program that allows building owners to meet criteria that are important to them. But when we are looking at the challenges to achieving one planet living, is a flexible program aggressive enough? The International Living Future Institute has developed a new vision through their Living Building Challenge. This rating system has imperatives in 9 different areas and sets absolute targets such as net zero water and energy. The Institute sponsored the Living City competition, which extrapolated the rating system from individual buildings to the community scale. Next, I'll share our entry in the Living Cities design competition. We decided to pick the hardest possible place to make into a living city, South Hedland in Western Australia, a mining town in a harsh climate with many social and planning challenges. Employees of the mine fly in and out for only a few months at a time and live in isolated temporary housing miles from their families. South Hedland is in the northern Australian desert, and although only 5 miles from the coast, temperatures average in the 90s and dip only into the 80s during the winter. It gets less than 12 inches of rainfall a year, a challenging area that we decided to apply the imperatives of the Living Cities Challenge.
So achieving a plan that would address all of the imperatives required a team that include 11 planning and engineering disciplines. And we all think we work together well, but working together from the beginning of a project required that the team really understand each other's playbook to a different degree. And we all started out thinking that we could achieve the imperatives by working within our own disciplines and our own comfort zones, and by choosing the best practices from our own disciplines. And as planners, we often think that our work is automatically sustainable. But in this contest, we had to prove it. And it appeared quickly short-sighted that working in silos would work. So, as an example, we realized early on that there was a conflict between 2 criteria: car-free living and energy self-sufficiency, kind of a surprise. But speaking broadly, transportation planners like very high density to make it easier to promote walking, transit, and biking by having a lot of people and mixed uses and different people close to each other. And again, speaking broadly, to attain energy self-sufficient buildings, energy planners prefer short buildings that have a lot of roof space to collect solar energy. So a city of skyscrapers would have forced the energy team to plan vast fields of solar collectors to support those buildings. And it would have affected how we drew the boundary of our city. But by talking through the issues across the disciplines, we found a solution that optimized both criteria. The final result was a collection of mid-rise buildings that were dense enough to allow for transit efficiency and be walkable and bikeable, but low enough to be relatively energy self-sustaining. In other words, we created an urban form that's like San Francisco or even LA.
Right, so the final result of all of this negotiating among disciplines was much more of a balance and a trade-off among these areas that reflected much more accurately and responded to the limits of our site. And it really reflected, as it's shown here, as an optimized solution for all the imperatives on our site. Next, we're going to look at some of the specific proposals that address these imperatives. So to achieve the net zero goals, we could have forced people to live behind thick adobe walls without any landscaping to save water and energy, but we wanted a livable place. So we rebuilt our public realm as a series of lush, shaded areas connected by walkable paths and mass transit connections. These solutions were considered not only for their own sakes, but within the constraints to achieve sustainability. Happily, sometimes our solutions were integrated. For example, tree canopies provide some ambient cooling and clean the air and provide shading in very pleasant, walkable public realm. In addition, we had to take our resource needs to the community scale. We mapped out our envisioned land use and then translated that into an anticipated energy demand to understand exactly how much renewable energy we would need to generate, which affected how we set our city boundary and how much land we had available to generate renewable energy. Water as well presented a very real challenge, and that the total water that could be captured was nowhere near the amount of water that we needed or that the community needed, even after we threw all of our best efficiency ideas. So alternate water sources, including seawater swales and desalination and treatment, were required to meet this challenge. One final thing we had to think through was the energy embodied in our materials, which is not something that we generally think through at the beginning of a plan. This was quite a challenge, and the region we worked with provided very limited building materials. So we emphasized the end-of-life recyclability of our materials and lived with the fact that we were going to have to transport them a long way.
So one other thing we found was that balancing the technical needs of the contest with the vision that we wanted to promote for a sustainable place was really challenging. It sometimes felt like the planners couldn't get off the ground and create a vision because the technical folks wanted the numbers. But the technical folks needed the numbers to prove that the analysis would work. So they saw too much visioning and not enough hard data.
So what did we learn from this design competition? Well, we didn't win, but as planners, we all are concerned about resource needs while creating livable communities. The Living Future Institute makes this challenge explicit, measurable, and holds each of us accountable.
Right. As planners, I think we're typically constrained by finance, but here we were constrained by natural resources as well. And we think that our planning priorities and our fuzzy concepts automatically lead to sustainability, but the details and the execution of this plan are not always something that we are concerned with at the concept level. And this system shows you how your decisions play out in the long run.
So there are many resources on the web to help you make sure you can achieve your sustainability priorities. Amy, Meg, and myself are part of a passionate design team at Parsons Brinkerhoff, and we're now applying our learning from the design competition into our daily work with the firm, and look forward to continuing the conversation with you and achieving these absolute imperatives.
Thanks.
Well, I have long wondered what all the younger generation was doing when they're constantly on their mobile devices. Now I know they're making snazzy PowerPoints just to make the rest of us look really bad. That's it.